I'd rather be full of myself than empty of myself. You know, I had a few people tell me when starting my YouTube channel, Natalie, you're so full of yourself, as if that was a bad thing, as if all my efforts to break out of my insecure mindset and become a confident person was somehow a display of self-importance and arrogance, when it was actually to help other people who felt the same way I felt. Depressed, insecure, lonely, anxious. You cannot be yourself. You cannot embrace who you are, and when you do embrace who you are, we're not going to be around you anymore. And I'm not saying to be conceited and arrogant. What I'm saying is oftentimes this is the way of life. When you start gaining confidence for yourself, you'll have people tell you, humble yourself. You're so full of yourself. Well, you know what I think? I think you're full of shit. And I think I'd rather be full of myself than empty of myself. Because a lot of those same people who laughed at me, who told me I would be better off just doing what they thought I should do, were really just empty of themselves. They were actually not full of themselves, they were full of other people. Other people and their opinions of what they should do with their life. They gave up their dreams because they wanted to fit in, not me. They dealt with so much insecurity within themselves that when someone else finally just steps out and becomes who they truly are and walks and speaks in their truth, it triggers them. And so in today's video, I'm going to be talking about how you shouldn't humble yourself. If you're new here, my name's Natalie. You can call me Nat though. This is the Improvement for Imbeciles podcast. This is where I share ways in which I'm getting my shit together so that you can get your shit together. Be sure to subscribe, like this video, stick around. But this isn't about me. This is about you, and this is about stepping into the highest version of yourself. And while I do share personal stories on my channel, anything I share is because I want to relate it to a very common thing that a lot of people experience. In this video, that is people going out of their way to humble you, and why you should move with caution when you hear people say, oh, you're really full of yourself, you need to humble yourself. And that isn't because I don't think you should be humble. I think humbleness is a very, very good quality to have, and it's a necessary quality if you want to become a leader at some point in your life. You need to be humble in order to attract people to have good connections in your life. You can't be so involved with yourself and I'm the best and I'm great and blah 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 blah. You can't act like that if you actually want to create real connections. However, oftentimes when people say those things to someone who used to be a lot more insecure and is now stepping into a more confident version of themselves, it is because they are jealous. And that's the truth. A lot of people cannot handle the truth that when you step into the truest version of yourself, you will have people who happen to be jealous of you. But that is their issue, not your issue. And so today I'm really going to be going into how to identify if you're actually being conceited or if it's just other people's jealousy that's being projected onto you, and how to deal with having other people be jealous of you. When you can tell that someone is jealous of you and they're kind of more insecure in some way, shape, or form, you almost take that on as your burden if you're a confident person who is often really empathetic, especially if you were also in that same exact spot at one point or another. You start looking at yourself when they say things to you like, oh, humble yourself, or, you know, you're way too full of yourself. Well, wait, am I too full of myself? You know, I didn't really think what I did was me being arrogant or anything. You were just, you know, maybe you were feeling yourself, feeling sexy, feeling confident, feeling like the best version of yourself is not a crime. Obviously, there are people that overdo it, and we are going to be talking about narcissists in today's topic, but alas, sometimes you feel like in order to keep a friendship or relationship in your life, you have to dim your light in order to have this person not feel threatened by you. Your success and confidence is seen as a direct threat to the ways they feel like they're failing themselves, the ways that they are insecure about themselves, and they immediately go, okay, well, I have to humble them. And again, I don't even think this is conscious. I think they're so unaware of this because they're so detached from themselves, they're so insecure with themselves that they just project, oh, well, this person is just way too cocky about themselves, they're probably narcissistic, blah, 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 blah. They project that idea because it's an easy conclusion to go to instead of looking within themselves. But other people's awareness or lack thereof awareness is not your problem. And so when you get to a point of confidence with yourself, you will often have people who are unaware of how they're projecting onto others naturally project onto you. They might talk down to you, discredit your successes, do anything they can to make you question yourself, all because they are lacking empathy for themselves and their own insecurities. And I think it goes back to empathy as well. because when someone does have a lack of empathy for themselves, it's very difficult for them to have empathy for others. And what I mean by this is narcissists. For a really long time, I had this fear. I had this fear of becoming like a family member of mine because I grew up with a narcissist. And this family member of mine was very, very arrogant and extremely conceited. They put on this shield of grandiosity and I'm better than you in order to overcompensate for their own insecurities, which were very, very obvious to the people close to them. They secretly felt very, very unimportant. So in order to overcompensate for this sense of unimportance, they would go out of their way to feel important, whether it was they're at a coffee shop and they make the barista do all of these different things for them just for their drink, or, talks their ear off for 20 minutes just to feel some sense of control of the world around them. And we have all met people like this. Even if you haven't been close to someone like this, we all know of people who put on this sense of grandiosity, this shield almost, this mask of grandiosity of, I am better than you, when in reality, they are just deeply, deeply insecure. You can also feel it in their aura. I'm a very, very spiritual person, so sometimes I will meet people who are very similar to this, and I kind of have a very good sense for people because of the way I grew up, because of being surrounded by a narcissist. And one of the biggest factors is they will go out of their way to associate with people who are super, super important just because they lack importance, while simultaneously they don't like the people they try to associate with. They will talk badly about them behind their back, they will spread lies about them, they will create drama, and they will make your life a living hell. That is not the message I want to preach in this video. When I say be full of yourself, I do not mean go into self-importance and arrogance and never acknowledge your insecurities because you feel they're too painful for you to acknowledge. Instead, look at your insecurities. If you grew up with a narcissist, it makes you feel so stressed out to be yourself that when you finally step into the version of yourself that you know is your truest self, it feels almost inauthentic to you. Because your entire life has been a game of putting on masks in order to please other people. But we were not made to live our entire lives solely for other people. At some point, we do have to step back into ourselves and we do have to face that fear. And often when we do, we are confronted with those wounds of feeling like, am I actually my truest version of myself? Am I being arrogant? Am I being conceited? And it's almost like the universe will know you have these wounds because when you do recognize those wounds, people will come into your life and start saying things like this. You're so full of yourself. You're so arrogant. And you'll have to check yourself, am I being narcissistic? Am I being arrogant? Because for so long, you've dimmed your light in order to match other people's dimmed light. And so here's how to check yourself if you're actually being arrogant or if you're just being confident. Number 1, have you thrown other people under the bus in some way, shape, or form in order to be seen by other people? People will call you arrogant if you are interrupting other people just to talk about yourself. If you make a moment that was supposed to be about someone else, about you. If you are being selfish in spaces where you need to be selfless, that is a big sign that, you are being full of yourself and you do need to shut up. And that might sound harsh, but you need to learn how to read the room. You need to learn how to know when your confidence is an overcompensation for your insecurity. And how you know is insecurity is really, really loud. Confidence is quiet. The example I gave at the beginning of my video was me saying, some people were telling me, oh, you're full of yourself for making my YouTube videos, when they were the ones that were going on my YouTube and, stalking my page because they were secretly feeling jealousy for me, speaking my own truth. But that wasn't me outwardly going to them and telling them, oh my God, go check out my YouTube video. I'm just so great at YouTube and blah, 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 blah. What you're doing is triggering me. So I'm going to tell you that what you're doing is, oh my God, you're so full of yourself. Oh my God, you're so cringe. Oh my God, blah, 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 blah. I'm going to insult you in order to make you feel less than. That's the biggest difference. A good example of someone saying that you're being full of yourself when it's actually valid that you're being full of yourself is, hey, I really didn't like how you brought up yourself when I was talking about this situation. It it made me feel really dismissed and unimportant, that's your cue to wake up and go, oh my God, that is not what I meant to do. If you have empathy for other people and you have self-awareness, you will take accountability for the times where you are being slightly self-centered, and you need to ground yourself and know that, you know, it's not always about you. And that's so important because there does need to be nuance there, you know? Like, I think there's a lot of harmful narratives on YouTube right now of like, oh, you need to not ever be humble, and, you know, you need to just be super conceited and arrogant. You know, there's a lot of that online right now, mainly because of the internet. Social media makes you hyper-focused on yourself. And so oftentimes people will be so hyper-focused on their self and their own brand and all of these things that they forget to check in on the people that really matter in their life. I am not one to bullshit, you guys. I've absolutely had times in my life where I have been conceited, and I believe everyone has. We are human. Some of us have had narcissistic tendencies before, and if you don't have the courage to look within you and acknowledge your own narcissistic tendencies, especially if you relate to me on the fact of growing up with a narcissist, or even just experiencing a narcissist at some point in your life, like if you've been that type of person, you need to look within and acknowledge your own narcissistic tendencies. And I think narcissism is like a really big buzzword right now. I want to add that it is an actual mental illness. Narcissistic personality disorder is not the same exact thing as having narcissistic tendencies. There's multiple quizzes online that you can go and take and check your own narcissistic tendencies, and I really highly suggest that if you're watching this video and you don't know what narcissism is, and you don't know if you have narcissistic tendencies, and you're going back and forth in your head of, oh my God, am I being conceited? Am I being full of myself? Or am I just finally stepping into my true self? Go online and look up a narcissistic tendency quiz, because I think a lot of people would benefit from acknowledging the parts of themselves that they still need to work on, while also realizing like your own confidence is not, I repeat, is not narcissism. Like, finally stepping into who you truly are and accepting yourself for everything you are isn't being narcissistic. It's okay to feel sexy. It's okay to feel confident. It's okay to want to gas yourself up once in a while, or post a thirst trap, or whatever the kids do nowadays. Like, it's okay to want to do things like that. Oh my God, the kids do nowadays. Like, I'm like talking like I'm 30 years old. Oh my God. I'm literally 20. Calm down, Natalie. But you get what I mean? Like, it's okay to want to feel confident in yourself. In the world of social media, there's a lot of people saying, you know, everyone's so obsessed with themselves nowadays. But at some point, you do need to be obsessed with yourself, but not in the way that social media says you should be obsessed with yourself. Be obsessed with your growth. Be obsessed with becoming the best version of yourself. Be obsessed with how beautiful and wonderful you are, and start to treat yourself the way that you treat other people. Like the same way that you look out for other people, start looking out for yourself that way. Because if you're not going to be full of yourself, who is? If you're not full of yourself, you're empty of yourself. So I think a lot of the times people will say, oh, you're so full of yourself, but there's a right way to be full of yourself. How does it look like to be full of yourself in the right way? Well, number one, you vouch for yourself. When you feel like you're being done wrong, you say something. You state your boundaries clearly and concise. And by stating your boundaries, you let the pieces fall where they may. Sometimes we don't act in the way that we want to act. We express ourselves in ways that doesn't really reflect who we truly are. It just reflects that instant moment we feel where, oh my God, I'm feeling angry. I must go attack this person. I must go say something to them. I must go humble this person. We don't always act rationally, and that is human. But when you act in a way that doesn't do yourself justice, don't dwell on it too much. Start thinking of solutions and start acknowledging the hurt you felt in that moment. Have the courage to acknowledge where that reaction came from. Because sometimes we can be really embarrassed and we can shame ourselves for reacting a certain way when we feel abandoned or threatened or whatever the case is. But every single emotion serves a purpose. That emotion is coming up for a reason. And the more aware of it you become, the better you'll react next time. I think a lot of narcissists really have trouble with acknowledging their feelings, which is why they go out of their way to bring other people down to their level. They will portray this persona that's just, oh my God, I'm so much better than you. It's because they don't know how to acknowledge their own feelings of inadequacy and abandonment that they've experienced in their own life. They act in controlling ways in order to control you, to not leave, and to not move move on to become the best version of yourself. Sometimes the version of yourself that you're stepping into threatens the version of yourself that they used to know you as. Like, people will sometimes get triggered by you becoming who you truly are, and they won't actually want you to step into your true self because they had this outdated version of you in their head already. Another way you can be more full of yourself in the right way is to accept every single part of yourself. Like, the bad parts, the good parts, literally everything. And that doesn't mean you don't have things to work on. But when you are in full acceptance of I am what I am, you're not looking at yourself as a project that needs to be fixed. You're looking at yourself as a mosaic of everything you are. You have certain parts of yourself that you really, really like and other parts of yourself that you know need work. But you're not so dismissive of the negative parts of yourself. You actually incorporate them into who you are, and you recognize that you'll always have things to work on. There's always going to be another mountain and you're always going to want to make it move type shit. The least you can do is be confident in yourself and accept yourself for exactly who you are. The third piece of advice is to be extremely truthful to yourself. Like, when you are feeling something that you don't want to feel, or when you are being cocky or tacky, just be like, yeah, I'm in this mood and I don't really know what's going on, but I just feel this way. It's so natural to get into this tendency of having to find an explanation for why you feel a certain way, but like, sometimes you just feel how you feel, and that's explanation enough. And you don't need to go search for a reason and, guilt yourself into feeling different than how you feel. Sometimes you just feel a certain way. You often try to always find explanations for why you're feeling a certain way, and by doing so, you are constantly invalidating yourself. Stop it. Stop invalidating yourself. You'll figure out the reason for it later, but when you start feeling an emotion, just allow it to come up. And lastly, when you start being unapologetically yourself, you'll start saying fuck you to the people who are obviously jealous of you and trying to bring you down. You'll start seeing through other people's bullshit when it comes to them trying to dim your own light. And you'll start attracting authentic people who actually love when you are authentically yourself, because they are authentically themselves. Real recognizes real. Like, lean into that. With that being said, you guys, thank you guys so much for tuning into the Improvement for Imbeciles podcast this week. If you're tuning in on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, please give this podcast a review. It really, really helps. And if you're on YouTube, be sure to subscribe, like this video, and go check out my social medias. Instagram at mylifeasetched, TikTok and Snapchat at natalie etched. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. I really appreciate and love you guys. Be sure to subscribe. We're on the road to 100K, so please subscribe, like this video. I'll see you guys next week. Bye, y'all.